I'd like to take you through some common species of spiders that we find around us. Um, Maybe I can start with introducing spiders to you. They belong to a class called Arachnida. They are arachnids basically, and they're quite a diverse bunch of creatures. Worldwide, they're known. They're represented by about 45,000 plus species that have already been described, and estimates say that there could be about 140 to 170,000, including the ones that are not described. And in India, we have about 1,700 or more that have been described, and probably a few more thousands that are yet to go. And well, in terms of their diversity, let's talk about size for one, because that's one of the easiest things we relate to as, at least as laymen. And so the largest apparently is what you call the Goliath tarantula. I'm sure you'll know what tarantulas are. That's what many nightmares are made of. So the biggest one apparently has 11-inch leg span. It's called Theraphosa blondi. And the tiniest, on the other hand, is 0.3 mm. That's an adult. So you can imagine what sort of range of sizes they belong. In terms of habitat, I'm sure you've seen all of you all have seen the windows. They're, of course, they're outdoors, they're arboreal, they're found underground, found in deserts, they're found walking on water. So typically, I don't think they've left any sort of habitat unexplored. What also makes them rather unique from other creatures is that their use of silk. We've seen during the course of today itself that many creatures do use silk. These guys, however, make webs unlike most other creatures, and they do so in various ways. You have the typical orb weaver, which the round orb web. They make what. So we have no. I think the battery is running out. Check. Yeah. So coming to webs. So you have the typical orb web that we often see strung from trees, the round ones, concentric circles of it could be, similar constructions. We always also have the funnel webs, which are often made close to the ground. You have the tent webs, which is the Certophora species, and we have, the social webs. So spiders are essentially known to be cannibalistic, so it's a bit of an oddity to see social behavior in spiders. So you have the social webs as well. And they use this silk for various purposes. So it could be for predation, for capturing prey, it could be for resting and to protect themselves from elements and predators. They also use it for like safety line when they are going about their business. Also for wrapping their egg sacs and also wrapping their prey. Now, a couple of speakers have spoken about sexual dimorphism. It's basically goes to say that the males and females are physically quite different in appearance. Spiders in particular, not all the species, but quite a few of them do so show this sort of a dimorphism wherein the females are usually larger, much more bright and colorful and hard to miss. Whereas the males are fair bit tinier, it could be 4 to 10 or more times smaller than the female, and relatively duller in coloration and patterns. So let's get down to seeing some common species that we find around us. Now, maybe before that, I'll take a minute to discuss the difference between spiders and insects. So as we've seen before, insects usually have three body segments, which is the head, the thorax, and the abdomen, whereas the spiders have the head and thorax fused together. So, so that leaves spiders with basically two body segments, where the head and the thorax is fused, so it's called the cephalothorax, and the abdomen, of course. Insects again have three pairs of legs, whereas spiders usually have four. Not usually, almost always have four. In terms of eyes, spiders have ranging between 4 pairs, that is 8 eyes to 0. There are some cave-dwelling species who evolved in caves, have gotten rid of eyesight altogether, and they probably have vestigial eyes or not even that. So again, coming back to species, here we have the signature spider. It belongs to the genus Argeo, and it's not uncommon at all. In fact, especially in urban areas, in agricultural areas, I've seen them often. They belong to a family of spiders called the orb weavers, and it's called the signature spider because of the cross shape that you can see on the web that they make. So it's like a zigzag made out of their white silk, and they generally leave like a gap in the center of the X or the cross where they rest, and they usually invariably align the legs along with the cross. And because their silk is white, which is not very common in spiders, they are very easy to spot, the web itself that is. Otherwise, orb webs could be missed quite easily. So, the scientists theorize that it is white because it helps them to avoid bigger animals running into them or flying into them, and also it reflects UV light quite well because of the same reason. So I don't know if any of you guys go out in the field at night with a UV torch. I do sometimes, and it's nice to spot one of these guys. So it's also called the St. Andrew's cross spider for obvious reasons. And the zigzag is called the stereomentum, which apparently helps them maybe fine-tune the tensions of the web in ways. The Arrhenius mythificus, also called the kidney garden orb weaver, another guy from the orb weaving family. So, of course, they make orb webs, and it's very common to find them in your garden kind of habitat. They're really tiny. The females are about 5-6 mm or so, and the males couple of mm smaller. The sexual dimorphism is not so pronounced in this species. What's peculiar about these guys is if you look at them upside down, unfortunately this picture is with them looking up. If it was the other way, the kidney bean kind of marking on its abdomen, followed by the 2 dots, makes it look, gives it like a human face kind of an appearance. In fact, a lot of people say that it looks like the guy that comes on the Pringles pack, the old guy with the big mustache. So, again, I think like some of the other presenters have said before, coloration is not something that is detrimental to species identification. So, in fact, scientists or taxonomists among themselves say that taxonomy is colorblind, and purely because of this reason that you cannot go by color just by color for identifying a species. So usually they do range in the sort of a color spectrum between like green, brown, yellow or so, sometimes going up to reddish. The ventral sides are usually plain flat green, and they have like brownish bands at the ends of their leg segments. Even though they are obweavers, they do not sit on their webs. They, as you can see the picture of a leaf, towards the tip of the leaf they make a retreat and they rest there, not on the web itself. So that's another peculiar thing about them. The giant wood spider, Nephila pili. They are called the wood spider because they're found in woody habitat with large trees, and it could be in forested areas, it could be in your garden. And they are fairly large. Well, in pictures, everyone is looking about the same size, but these guys can go pretty large. For those who haven't seen them in real, the female, this one's a female by the way, they have quite a drastic visible sexual dimorphism in them. The females could be 3 to 5 cm in size. Now, whenever we are talking of spider sizes, we are always talking of just the body segments, not the leg span. And so, including the leg span, they could be a lot bigger. The males are usually a lot tinier, like probably the size of a head, and probably the length of a head, much thinner, and just a plain red looking guy hanging about her web. And so yeah, they call the giant wood spider for those reasons. And they also call the golden wood spider because the web they weave, especially under direct sunlight, could look as golden as the sunlight itself. So it's quite a spectacular find if you find one along your way. Their webs are usually vertical, that's perpendicular to the ground, and well, I think that's about it. Going on next. Poultice. Now, poultice again belong to the obweaver family. This guy weaves webs as well. This is a species that Siddharth Kulkarni had reported and described not too long back in 2013. What's really interesting about this guy is the long vertical stalk-like feature that you can see is actually an elongated abdomen. Well, that's how they are. They just built like that. And their coloration and their structure is such that when they sit on a twig or a branch, it's really hard to tell them from the tree or the plant itself. So their camouflage is quite incredible. And what they do is, this pose in which it's sitting is again quite typical for the species. So they would kind of surround with their abdomen popping out of the branch. They would surround their head or the cephalothorax segment with their legs, and there's like a small eye tubercle that's popping out between the legs to give them some vision. These guys are mostly nocturnal, meaning they're active at night. So during the day, they would sit on a branch and just be still and motionless and watch the world go by, or maybe not. But at night, they get active, they build their webs and can often find them there. The Gastrocantha. Now, again a genus from the obweaving family. These guys are not too hard to find. Like I've seen, the picture that you see here is Gastrocantha Bailey. I've seen a Gastrocantha geminata at home in Madras, which is bang in the middle of the city. They're not hard to find. They're rather tiny though, some of them. So if you just pay attention to the obweaver, the obwebs that you walk past, it's quite likely you will find one of these. So now they belong to the obweaving family, and they're known for their dramatic spines. So their abdomens have spines of various shapes and sizes. Now Daly has two coming out from the sides. Other species have other sort of spinal structures in their abdomens. Their coloration is quite bright and striking. So they're quite popular for those reasons. The Tetranatha. Again, orb weavers, but not from the family of orb weavers, as in they're from a family called Tetranychidae, not Aranetidae. So they are called long-jawed orb weavers. Of course, some of them have long jaws, but also like some of these speakers I mentioned before, common names are often misleading. Not always maybe, but often misleading, because even though they're called long-jawed orb weavers, not all the species in the genus have long jaws. But nevertheless, you can maybe, if you want to sort of describe them in common language, you can call them stretch spiders. Some of them call it stretch spiders because okay. So I'm not sure if you can see the body, but it's basically thin and long. Usually for a spider, it's not a very usual feature other than for the Tetranatha family. So they have elongated abdomens, they have elongated front two pairs of legs, both of which you can vaguely make out over here. The reason why you can vaguely make it out is because they again are very good with the camouflage. One sitting on a stem or a branch would just merge very conveniently with its background, making it hard to be spotted by people he wants to hide from. So they have these elongated body parts, because of which you can probably call them a stretch spider. They make webs, and of course, like a lot of other successful species of arthropods, their camouflage is quite incredible. That's to show you the elongated jaw, so to say. It's the Calicidae actually of the spider. It's picture that I've taken at a friend's farm with a mating pair, male. So this is the Tetranatha. In this species, in this particular species, the female doesn't have the elongated jaws, so which is why it's misleading to go by common names. The lynx spider, or the ones belonging to the family Oxyopidae, it's called lynx because of its certain similarities to the lynx cat. It's known for its extremely sharp eyesight and also for its very acrobatic maneuvers. So now these guys don't build webs like the orb weavers do. So they are active hunters. So they would, sit on top of plants, or some of them have a habit of sitting in flowers and waiting in ambush for unsuspecting insects to fly by, and of course you know what will happen after that: breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And these guys can also be recognized rather easily. Now, the one on the left, as it says, is the Oxyopus species. On the right is the Peuchia. They can be recognized rather easily by the eye arrangement. Unfortunately, none of these are close-ups. So they have a sort of a hexagonal eye arrangement, which can be easily recognized, and their legs are invariably, you can find some rather prominent spines on their legs. So at least with the combination of the hexagonal eye arrangement and the leg spines, you can say quite safely that you are close to a lynx. Again, this particular Peuchia is green in color, whereas coming back to the fact that taxonomy is colorblind, it's they are also found in other sort of color morphs. Crab spiders, or the family Homicidae. Now they are also called flower spiders. Well, let's go to the crab bit first. As you can see on the top left, the front two pairs of legs are always held in a way which resembles crabs. And adding to that is the fact that they have the ability to move sideways like crabs. They called flower spiders because they are often found in flowers. So they basically, again, waiting in ambush in the flowers, waiting for unsuspecting pollen gatherers or so on, and breakfast after that. Homicides again show quite a drastic sexual dimorphism, wherein the females are larger and more colorful and so on, and the males invariably are much smaller and usually like a dark, pale, dull red sort of color. Social spiders. I had made a brief mention of these guys in the beginning of the talk, saying that since spiders are cannibalistic, it's rather unusual to see social behavior in spiders. Well, Stegodyphus is one such genus where you have social behavior. On the bottom right, you can see a nest. So these guys would make fairly elaborate, large nests where they would live socially. They cooperate in terms of hunting, they cooperate in terms of other functions that they play in their social order. And they usually found in dry parts. So, like, let me get you the right word. Warm and dry habitats. So, yes. Well, they're not entirely non-cannibalistic because the young ones are known to prey on the older dead females. It was initially thought that it's their mother that they prey on when the mother dies, but then later on it was discovered that they are very adjusting and they would prey on other old females. And so that's about the Stegodyphus. Jumping spiders. I think it's fairly safe to say that everyone's seen one of these at home. This was in fact shot at home. I'm going to sort of run through it a little faster now. I'm running short of time. So these guys again don't build webs for prey capture. They are active hunters, very agile, very acrobatic again. Again found in very diverse habitats, indoors, outdoors, trees, ground, so on and so forth. They also have a very wide range in terms of their visual morphs. So they could be bright and colorful with some decorative markings, and they have exceptionally good vision because they use that for their hunting and also for escaping from hunters. And it's easy to recognize them by their front row of eyes, which is the middle two eyes in the front row are very prominent and large, and their face has a sort of a flattish form in the front. I'll just skip to the next slide. Now, there was a mention of Sunny Joseph earlier in one of the talks. Now, Sunny has had observed the Silus sunnyglocus species in Kerala, which he had reported on IDP, and it further went on to be described as the first report of this species from India. It was earlier known to be in various other parts of Asia. So this is the Silus species is another jumping spider. So this is a live example of how citizen science could go on to, add to the scientific records of the diversity around us. Arrhenius panchaganiensis. Now Arrhenius again is a typical orb-weaver species. The main reason for this slide is to show that the same species could have different morphs in terms of the coloration and the patterns in the abdomen, also the coloration of the cephalothorax. So it's you cannot really go by the visual cues alone or the most obvious visual cues. So it also happens that a spider that looks in a certain way, more than one species could look in that certain way. So it works both ways. Ecobius is another species that is, they're really tiny, like a couple of long spiders that build these star-shaped webs all over the house, on walls, especially on corners, on windows, and so on. They make good pest control for like little fruit flies and little insects that fly into your house. And coming to the last slide, it's a crab spider or a flower spider sitting in ambush on a flower. You can hardly tell that it's a spider, and if you put an insect, probably it will be harder for you to tell. So there it is. Insect. I'm sorry. Thank you.